thank all of our veterans, near and far, with us and not. We're fortunate to have Stephanie Wade today. I know a lot of you know her. Stephanie is a former Marine infantry officer, an environmental activist, educator, and a personal hero of mine. She has most recently worked as policy and field staff advisor to an Orange County member of Congress and an Orange County supervisor. She is a founding member and current chair of the Lavender Democrats PAC, an Equality California board member, the list goes on, and a past chair of the Orange County Veterans Advisory Council. Please give a warm welcome to Stephanie Wade.
Well, first of all, Carolyn, thank you, and Alex as well, and all of you. I was asked to speak on courage, and in particular on the courage to support LGBTQ people who really need it right now. But we're all showing courage by being out here day in and day out, or every week, turning up here. That's courage. And so I'm going to try and talk about that a little and just put a head on it a little bit, and I'll try and make it connected to, LGBTQ people in particular. But let me read you some names first. Catherine Cortez Masto, Jackie Rosen, Maggie Hassan, Jean Shaheen, Dick Durbin, John Fetterman, Tim Kaine, and along with Angus King, the independent. Those are the Democrats who just folded, right? They did not show courage. And if you're disappointed in them, you shouldn't be, because courage always comes from the bottom, not the top. I will tell you that in a former life, I spent 6 years studying colonial American and military history and slave societies at Duke. And so I read a lot about the American Revolution, was writing on it. And without going into the details, what I was writing about was something that we didn't learn in school. Those elite founding fathers, the wealthy ones like the George Washingtons and the Henry Lawrences, the people who are leaders at the top of our revolution, they didn't get there because they were courageous. They got there because people like Crispus Attucks, right? Working people, mostly white working people, to be frank, but they were pushed there in the Stamp Act protest where they tore down Governor Hutchinson's house. They were pushed to get there, and they were between a rock and a hard place. They knew they had wealth in the Americas, but the British Empire and the British Crown wasn't supporting them, and they were being pressured from below. That's what we need to do to pressure the Chuck Schumers and the Hakeem Jeffries of the world right now. And make no mistake, Minority Leader Schumer, made a play of, I'm voting against this, blah, blah, blah. He's the one that told those 8 Democrats how to vote, and he picked those 8 Democrats to take one for the team because all of them were either had announced their retirements already or they weren't up for re-election until at least 2028. This was a vote of cowardice on his part, and he was trying to cover himself, but he's the one that made that decision. I've worked for a member of Congress. I know how this works. He can put pressure on them to whip that vote, and it was a popular position to fight against this. No, he folded like a cheap lawn chair, right? So we're the ones that have to give these Democrats courage. And I'm going to tell you, it sometimes takes courage for me as a person in Democratic organizing to say those things, right? I get a lot of shit. I wrote a very critical editorial of Sarah McBride, and I get a lot of shit for that because people in the party who've worked their way up they have access to these people, and they want to make friends and know they're important people, and they will say things to me like, well, I know Sarah McBride, she's a friend of mine, and I can't take sides on this. I heard that from a transgender woman at the LGBTQ or at Equality California's leadership conference just a month or two ago. And what that person was telling me, a transgender person was telling me, is they're not really friends. They don't get together and go to movies. What she's telling me is they've met a few times and she has access via, she could probably call Sarah McBride and get her up on her phone number. So she doesn't want to make an enemy of Sarah McBride. That's the problem. We need to reform our left-wing machine, whether you're a Democrat, an independent, or a Republican that knows what time it is. We need to punish and primary people who don't do right, and we need to make enough noise so they cannot ignore us. Yeah. So I'll speak about courage, and the key theme here is that what we're doing here today and what we do every day, that is showing courage. Last cycle, I knocked on about 5,000 doors for Dave Min and Derek Tran, both of whom have disappointed me by following leadership into making some really bad votes, like voting for a memorial for Charlie Kirk that said he was a great guy. Yeah, damn right, boo, right? But I will tell you, given the alternatives, I'd probably vote and walk for them again, but we need to, keep pressuring these people, right? And that's one way we do it. But here's the thing. Courage is something we can inculcate, right? I brought with me the book, Why Civil Resistance Works, by Erica Chenoweth and Maria Stephan. That's the book you've probably heard about, that idea of 3.5% of the population engaged in the civil resistance movement is the most effective force and usually will achieve regime change. That's what we're doing here today, right? And it's not just showing up for one No King's Day, it's building on that every day. And one of the ways we do that is being very public with our resistance. So one of the things I did as an ask is I brought some buttons with me. These are the last 5 of these buttons that we made up at the Lavender Dems. And they say, no to ICE against the black background, and yes to nice against a transgender pride flag. So I got 5 left. The first 5 people who come and get one, please you're more than welcome to it, but I only ask this, that if you take one, you will wear it to places where it's uncomfortable for you to wear it, whether that's Thanksgiving dinner with your Trumpy uncle or to your job where they don't want you to be political at work. Wear it places where it counts, because that's how we strengthen and encourage our friends, how we push people who are wavering and don't know which side to choose, and most of all, how we cow our enemies, right? It's got to be public. When I said I knocked on those 5,000 doors, it was always at the end. I was talking to Democrats, they're like, oh yeah, democracy's on the line. I'm all in. Yeah. Okay. We'd like to know, would you like to donate to the camp? Oh no, not right now. Would you be willing to volunteer? Oh, I just don't think I have the time. How about would you take a fucking yard sign? I don't know. I don't want to upset my neighbors. Upset your goddamn neighbors. Have the courage to do it. That's courage. So if we want our leaders to have courage, we got to show courage. I'm going to tell you a quick story about why we're doing this at the Frida. I had initially been planning, and this of all years, transgender people need to see support from the public, right? So I went to the LGBTQ Center. I said, you traditionally do this small event for Transgender Day of Remembrance. Let's do a bigger event, please. And let's make it public. And so I connected the center with Vicente Sarmiento, who's one of those brave, really good people. Our supervisor, who's the supervisor who represents Santa Ana. And he was going to get us the steps of the old Orange County Courthouse to do a big, big event. And after Charlie Kirk died, I heard from the center, yeah, given the current environment, and, we think there's a threat, and so we're going to do a smaller, more intimate event. They're doing an event that can only take a maximum of 70 people. They're doing it at a small venue, and they only advertised it once on Facebook. Now, look, I want to support the LGBT Center, and that's why our proceeds are going there, because Lord knows, queer kids, especially in Orange County, especially poor queer kids, need that center. It's the only center we got. But we need to show them how to be brave, and that's why we're doing this event. So I have a QR code. That didn't look very professional. But so I'm going to keep this up, and you can take a look at it. But this QR code, please, go to our link tree and pick some things you can do. And the most important thing, like we mentioned, is on Thursday next week, on the 20th at 7:30 in Santa Ana, we're going to host a bigger Transgender Day of Remembrance. And I want to sell that place out, in part because we had to pay $720 to the Frida for the use of the theater, which, by the way, they are a sponsor, and they did that at a deep discount for us, but we still got to pay that. We have some other expenses, and then we want to be able to donate to the center. So we're only charging $10 a piece. That theater takes 200 people. I want to sell out. As of last night, we only had 4 people that bought, but we just started advertising it. I'm hoping today, when I'm done talking, that a bunch of folks can go right now today and sign up for that event. It will be fun. One of our members composed the early production of this, or wrote and scored this musical that we're going to see. And it's important because transgender people are being pushed out of existence. Now, I promise to speak about why it matters to everyone. First of all, it's just the start of the fascist playbook. Magnus Hirschfeld in 1933 ran the first institute for the study of gender and sexuality. And in 1933, he was the first target. Before they were really, really going after Jews, they went after, he happened to be a Jewish man, and his sexual institute, because it was easier to go after queer people first. You all know the damn poem, right? So that's one reason. But I'm going to tell you the other part of the deal. I don't care who you are in America. These arbitrary rules about gender and sexuality do nobody any good. I was a Marine for 9 years. I love the Marine Corps, and I recognize the power of a group operating in unison and with uniformity. But only when there's a purpose and when there's a social utility to it. And I want to tell you, these rules about gender, they're entirely arbitrary, and they hurt everyone. I don't care if you're a man or a woman or non-binary, right? Everybody has experienced times when these gender norms or expectations were painful and didn't do you any good. The woman who didn't want to speak up at a meeting. The man who was embarrassed because he cried or felt embarrassed every time he went to the automotive dealership because he didn't know about cars and he got made fun of and taken advantage of, right? I don't care who you are. These things all suck. Let people be who they want to be. That's as American as goddamn apple pie. So, and I'll say, like, right now in this country, there are whole states where it's illegal for me to use the goddamn bathroom, right? There's a whole country in Great Britain that 10 years ago was one of the most progressive places on earth for transgender and gender non-conforming people. Great Britain is now one of the worst. So we need to fight back to protect this tiny minority. And I'm going to say a quick word about sports, because you probably talk to people, and that's the wedge issue that they use to divide people. Transgender people are taking over women's sports. I'm going to give you two things. First is a statistical fact. At most, the highest estimates for transgender people are 1.5% of the population. At most. Now, cut that in half, because we're only worried about those that identify as female, right? Now, I'm going to tell you something about most transgender females. They are hyper feminine and have adopted this idea that sports are masculine, and that's the last thing they want to do. But for those handful of people, I've been an athlete all my life. I was a PE teacher. I love sports. I'm not willing to create them as a class of people who are not allowed to participate in the joy of sports and are segregated in that way. It's a tiny number of people. Not one NCAA scholarship has ever gone to a transgender person. Not one. So this is a non-existent problem in search of a terrible solution. And that's how they're using it. But if you feel uncomfortable about it, I'm telling you, please examine yourself, because I'm telling you it's your implicit bias. And you're not a bad person. It's just you grew up in a world that every view of transgender or gender non-conforming people was, they're a psychopathic killer or they're the butt of jokes. So it makes you susceptible to these fears about transgender people. And I'm going to tell you one other story about sports. I recently moved into Leisure World. I play golf. I love to play golf, and I'm terrible. But on several occasions, I've been asked, hey, do you want to play in the tournaments? But the Trumpy people ask me in the men's tournament, or in the men, they have a weekly tournament. It's just a friendly way for people to get together and play golf and keep score. I would love to play with the women, but I don't want to play with men. And I'm not trying to beat women and dominate the sport. I just want to get out and have fun and meet people. But the only way they would allow me to do it is to humiliate myself and go out while wearing my golf dress and go out and play with the men. That's what this is about. It's about shaming and disciplining people to some gender norms that fucking suck and do no good for anybody. So, thanks. So I'll finish up by pointing again to that link tree. You can find a number of actions. The most important one right now for us, as I mentioned, is attending our event next Thursday and showing transgender people that even here in bloody red Orange County, that we're turning purple and we're supporting our trans and gender non-conforming peeps. And the last thing I'll say is we can have nice things. We can have a world where the billionaires are afraid of us instead of the other way around. We can nationalize fucking SpaceX and pay that crook pennies on the dollars because we paid for all of that. and it's national security. They can't say they care about that. Let's nationalize the shit out of SpaceX. We can have universal health care, right? We can have fully funded social goddamn security so my mom can fucking eat. But we have to show courage every single day, and we have to show it to cow our enemies, to bring over the wavering, and to make our side, to give them more courage and make it infectious. That's how we do this. Thank you.